clock on the wall tells us it's time for another episode of Learn, Teach, Lead, where we explore how educators, just like you, are using innovative instructional strategies, including how to leverage AI to improve teaching and learning.
Each week, we share real classroom stories, tools, and tips to help you save time, personalize instruction, and lead with confidence.
I'm Jeanine Nostrum, an elementary school principal.
And I'm Robyn D'Angelo, an elementary school teacher. Let's get started with today's Friday Deep.
So first of all, Robyn, I'd like to just point out our amazing t-shirts, Learn, Teach, Lead t-shirts, right? It was twinning day today at school.
Yes.
So we were all wearing black t-shirts, and of course we had to pick these t-shirts. And I'd like to also welcome Ashley Novellino back to the podcast. Thank you, Ashley, for spending your Friday afternoon in June with us. We appreciate it. Ashley was an active participant and a valued member of our PLC this year, and that's what we're going to be talking about, unpacking the work that we did with our PLC and trying to glean some insights from it so we can go forward next year in a powerful way. So, Robyn, why don't you set the stage for us?
Sure, thank you, and welcome, Ashley. In March of this year on the podcast, we shared a story of our Grow PLC, a 6-month professional learning experience focused on helping teachers use student data to really drive instructional decisions and accelerate student growth. Through the Grow framework, teachers learned how to gather student evidence, refocus on the specific skills student needs, organize instructional responses, and watch student progress to determine the next steps. So throughout the process, teachers analyzed student work, reflected on instructional practices, and collaborated with colleagues to better meet the needs of all of our learners.
Yes, and a really big part of this work was introducing the teachers to how they could use AI tools to help support their work, helping them analyze student data, identify skill gaps, create instructional resources, and of course, most importantly, personalized learning experiences. And this enabled them to give more targeted feedback to students. And I really feel that perhaps the greatest strength of the PLC was the collaboration that it fostered among the teachers. Teachers came together to share ideas and problem solve and learn from one another, and they really kept student success at the center of every conversation. So as we were reflecting on this experience, the participants were asked to kind of identify some major takeaways from the PLC. And so, of course, we wanted to hear directly from one of those teachers. So we're happy to talk with you today, Ashley. Ashley's a first grade teacher, and she experienced this work firsthand. And we're going to talk about the impact the PLC had on her teaching, what she's hoping to explore next year as we continue in this work, and just really talk about what advice she would offer to other educators who are maybe looking to bring similar practices into their own classrooms. So Ashley, thank you again for joining us.
No problem. So I really learned a lot from this PLC this year. I took a lot away from it. It was a lot of fun. So thank you for that. But the biggest impact I felt was like learning how to use the data that I collected to guide my instruction in a more intentional way. So I found that it's very hard for a first grader to know what a finished sentence is versus a not finished sentence. So that's kind of what I was focusing on. And the process really helped me to see how powerful it could be to break something that big into smaller, more manageable steps to help them create, or to help myself create lessons that could directly address the students' needs. So we were really focusing on what a finished sentence is versus a not. And then from there, how to add details to make it a finished sentence. So the who, the what, the where, the when. Honestly, I wish I started a little bit earlier. We probably could have gotten a little bit further, but I mean, it was just amazing just to see how quickly they were able to pick it up, and like it made teaching it so much easier, because then I was able to pull, rather than being like, okay, they didn't get it. I pulled 1 or 2 students into a little strategy group for those that still struggled a little bit more. So it was really helpful.
I was just wondering, you had mentioned starting a little bit earlier. So do you think that you would start this right in the beginning of the year? Or what's your thought process for next year? I mean, it sounds to me like you're going to continue with this process, especially for the sentence writing, but what were your thoughts about starting it earlier?
I think I would try to start earlier because writing's just such a big part of our unit anyway. Like we do a lot of it in here. Not only do we do a lot of stories, we do our weekend news. And like I was noticing at the beginning of the year, like I had to be like, okay, and what else? Like prompt them a little bit more, because it would just be like, I went to park. I'm like, okay, well, who did we go to the park with? To get them to write a little bit more, because now looking at it, like we're in our last unit of writing, and I have students that are like, one of them today was like, I wrote 30 pages. I was like, and imagine at the beginning of the year when we only wrote like 3, and it was like, I went to school, I went home, I went to bed. Now it's like they're adding so much detail. Some of them like still have trouble putting where punctuation might be, but like now I see like what time of the day did they go? Where did they go? Who was with them? Like you just start to see that a little bit more. So yeah, I would definitely try and start earlier, because sentences are just such a big aspect, and that is a challenge that I found even when I was teaching second grade. Like they had a hard time knowing if this sentence was finished or not finished. So
that's amazing. And if I can just kind of like echo off what Ashley said, because I taught 4th grade this year, and I feel like, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, Ashley, but I feel like you're almost saying, and like what I did, I feel like my biggest impact this year through this PLC was teaching with intention and not guessing what the students needed, but knowing what the students needed, because I had the data in front of me to guide that instruction intentionally. So I know that you talked about looking at sentence patterns in 1st grade. And in 4th grade, it was looking at elaboration. So noticing those patterns, this PLC took me beyond what the concept or the standard that I was teaching. It took me beyond that, and it made me look at the whole class as a whole and where I needed to zone in on the individual need. And it showed me what I should do for my next steps with confidence. I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't saying, oh, well, little Johnny might need, work in sentence structure. I knew exactly what little Johnny needed, because I used my teacher lens as well as my AI lens that we learned in the PLC to target that instruction. And it made that useful yet not overwhelming, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think AI plays a really important role in that, because you can quickly get the feedback from AI, and then you can review it and have that debate. Do I agree with this? Do I not agree with that? I didn't notice that actually when I was reviewing this stack of papers. And to have it laid out in such an organized fashion, it really helps you refocus your instruction. And then, planning the differentiated instruction isn't hard for us, right? But analyzing data across a class, that's a little bit trickier and more time consuming. So I really think that the magic in this GROW framework that we've been using, I mean, every step is important, but that refocusing step that we do, as you said, with the teacher lens and the AI lens, I think that's where the secret sauce is, honestly. So that's great. That's wonderful. So Ashley, we have an idea for next year. We were thinking about using the same GROW framework and expanding it to include like behaviors, engagement, positive classroom, management and atmosphere. So what do you think about that? What challenges or opportunities do you think might be ahead for us if we were to use the GROW framework in this way?
Well, as a 1st grade teacher hoping to tackle challenges related to the student engagement, like you just said, and helping them just develop independence and self-regulation skills. I noticed that's something we struggle a lot with in 1st grade. But like mainly students are still learning how to work collaboratively. They need to learn how to stay on task for longer periods of times, and they need to manage their emotions throughout the day, which is all very tricky. And I'm not just saying them, like me as well too. I mean, I feel like everyone does. But that would be fun to kind of see what AI can help us do with that. I'm excited because it could build a strong sense of community. And I think that having that opportunity to collaborate with all the colleagues to see what's working in their classes and what could possibly work with my class, and analyzing all of those different lessons and things would be would help us create even more supportive learning environment for all of the students.
I completely agree. And I'm going to be teaching third grade next year, which is a huge transition year. I've come to see teaching third and fourth. And I feel like, my goal through this GROW method is to continue what we've already done, the amazing work we've done academically, but now look at it as the whole child, socially, emotionally, behaviorally, and academically. And one of my goals, and I could build off of that, Ashley, because it's kind of the same concept, is stamina. A lot of, building stamina in third grade and reading and writing and problem solving and staying engaged is one of the behaviors we really try to support in the beginning of the year. So I feel like through this GROW method of looking at the data, what is happening in our classroom, or, refocusing it, watching and organizing what we can do in order to give those students that support. Because I feel like once you tackle these small behaviors with these supports and these engagement patterns, you're going to start seeing, I hope I'm right on this, we'll see next year, the academics come along the way of improvement and engagement. And I feel like we're secure with the academic foundation now. So now let's throw the behavioral in there, social, emotional, and see how much more we can guide that academic progress. So I'm super excited for that as well.
And honestly, we have a lot of, like, I was chatting with another teacher, and the teacher was saying, well, where will this data come from about the social and emotional or behavioral or engagement? And of course, when you have a reading level, you have a reading test, a math assessments, a writing sample. Behavior is a little bit different. So we'll have to pull from our anecdotal records, from our discipline records. So it might be a different kind of data set. But again, it's worth having the AI lens to kind of interpret it and look for patterns, as well as our perception. And I also think it will help us move from that emotional reaction to things that happen in the classroom. Like, I mean, honestly, some things are frustrating, some things are upsetting, some things are, tiring, and you can have an emotional reaction to that instead of really just looking at the data. So I think it's going to be an interesting study, and hopefully will yield some great results. And yes, you're right, hand in hand, the academics and the behavior, of course, will go hand in hand.
And I hope as a teacher, to use my lens every day, when I observe my students in my class, to use that and then find patterns using AI of the behaviors in my class. Day to day, unless we're writing hand notes every single day, we forget. We're human. We forget what happened a week ago and what happened today. And we don't sometimes see the patterns. And that's what AI is good for, determining patterns. So I'm anxious to take my notes, put them in there, obviously anonymously. We always use our student numbers, and see what that tells me is happening, and looking back and say, oh, wow, that is a pattern that I didn't see. So that's what I'm anxious to see next year.
Definitely. Okay, Ashley, we have one more question.
One more question, hot seat.
Yep. So if a teacher was listening today and you wanted to tell them to try just one thing from your PLC experience, what would you recommend that they try?
I found that just taking a closer look at and identifying one specific need rather than the many was really helpful. I found that designing instruction around the single need was a lot easier than thinking, okay, this person needs this and this, because it made it just so much harder with all the little small groups rather than having one big group. So I just found that when narrowing the goal to something that's very specific, so in my case, completing the sentences and making sure that they're finished sentences, I was able to see the student growth a little bit more and really pinpoint, okay, this one still isn't getting it. They might need a little bit more work. Whereas in sometimes if it's just one, like I might focus on that student over there because they needed to work on capital letters, and then I might not be able to scoop back to go to another one. So just focusing on one singular need was a little bit easier, and then I could go on to that next goal. Sometimes the most
Can I ask, you've reframed that as your priority need for the class, right? Is that what you were? Okay, yes. I was just checking.
And then like sometimes the most effective teaching happens when we slow down. So when we're able to analyze the data and target that one skill at a time, it makes the instruction more purposeful and gives the students a clearer path.
Great.
Wow. I agree wholeheartedly. I think my biggest recommendation, if I can tell somebody to, do this next week, would be keep it simple and actionable, right? So look at one piece of student work or one assessment, and then look for one pattern. And what are the students doing well? Where are they getting stuck? What can we do? What's our next step to do? Can we do a quick reteach? Can we do a 10-minute group? Can we do a small group? Can we do a model lesson? It doesn't have to be this huge redesign, but what's that one actionable step that will get us from point A to point B? Keep it simple.
And I think my actionable step, I'll chime in with one because I just popped into my head as you ladies were sharing your great ideas, is to encourage a teacher to take a piece of student work and write down what you think the priority concerns are. What would you address first? And then compare it to what AI suggests and see where the commonalities are. Are there any surprises based on the feedback that you get from AI, or is it just as you expected? I think that's worth doing. I think it's eye-opening. We found it eye-opening when we used AI to, be like a double check for our assessment practices. So interesting stuff.
Great.
Yeah. Well,
a
Robyn,
lot of good things happening here at the ranch.
Yep. But right now, it looks like that old clock on the wall is telling us it's time to wrap up another episode of Learn, Teach, Lead, our Friday debrief. We've shared a few lessons, unpacked a few stories, and maybe sparked a few new ideas for your classroom or your leadership journey.
As always, we hope you'll take what you've learned, teach it forward, and lead with purpose. Thanks for spending part of your week with us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thanks, Ashley.
No problem.
Bye.